Ready? Are you ready?
All the time.
All right, here we go. Welcome to the Mission Ready podcast, where we focus on building high-performing teams. My name is William Branham, retired Navy SEAL with 26 years of service, sniper instructor, performance coach, and I do some other stuff, public speaking. And I'm joined with my co-host, Brenda Neckvatal, who is tell me about yourself, Brenda, because I completely forget the things that you tell me what to say.
No.
Crisis management and some other stuff.
Yeah. So
not my expertise. So it's your expertise. I'm good at other things.
No, it's all right. I'm a tenured HR professional. I joke and say that I'm a recovering HR professional. I've been working in the field of HR for a long time. I am a crisis management specialist. I am also a specialist.
I knew it. Crisis management was one of those things. Yes.
Yeah, you did good on that one. And then also a specialist in group dynamics. So I basically understand pretty much what's going on in the minds of people, especially when either they go left, right, or center. So that's kind of the best way I could explain it. And super glad that we're here. We got a little reversal this time. This time I'm traveling and you're in your office versus the last two episodes. So I probably look a little squishy online, but that's okay.
I spend a lot of time on the road, and it's weird that I'm actually not the one on the road this time.
I know, right? So, yeah, we're down here in Texas this for the next several days. So, doing what I do down in Texas. So, loving it.
Right on.
Yeah.
Cool. So, in this episode, I think we talked about doing some leadership lessons from the battlefield.
Yep. Exactly.
And one of the things I was thinking about with that is I remember back in 2005 when we were handed the not so awesome deal of being the security detail for the interim government of Iraq. And, we did this whole, 18 months of workup to go kick doors and hunt bad guys and do all this other stuff. And the interesting thing about this is this was a no-fail mission. This was a mission that, when I got handed this mission at SEAL Team 10 as a senior enlisted guy of my platoon, I asked the commanding officer, I was like, why did you pick us? We're like, every indication has shown that we have performed better than any other platoon here at the team in doing that SEAL mission. And he says, yes, you have. And that's why I'm putting you in this position to go do this job, because I need to put my best foot forward, because this is a no-fail mission. I trust your platoon to go do this more than the other platoons. So how are you going to say no to that? When the commanding officer says, you're the best and the brightest at the team, so I'm going to give you the shit show mission. Not the good deal mission. I'm going to give you the hard mission, because you performed at a high elite level, which is a very hard pill to swallow, but it's also like, wow, you just made me think about it in a very different way. So I think that alone, and that wasn't really anything I was planning on talking about today, but it does go kind of in the direction of some of the leadership lessons that I am going to talk about. And one of those was doing that mission. SEALs we don't like to follow the rules. We like to take them as far as we can without breaking them, or maybe we don't even care if we break them. We just want to do what we want to do. We are adverse to authority. And so the traditional thing, me as a senior enlisted guy, part of my responsibility is good order and discipline, military standards, haircuts, shaves, be in the right uniform at the right time, all this other stuff. Very HR centric job, and very thankless job also, by the way. But so we got over to Iraq, and guys were like, hey, can we grow beards? Can we let our hair grow out a little bit? Do we have to tuck our shirt in? Silly little things like that. And during that time, we had Blackwater, Triple Canopy, Dynacore, and several other military contractors also doing this security detail, personal security mission for other diplomats in the green zone of Iraq. And you could spot those guys from a mile away. They wore the same clothes that we wore, but their shirts were untucked. They had big, scraggly, greasy beards. Their hair was all long and greasy. There were women that were you know, the same way. They had like 17 pistol mags on their belt. I'm not sure why you need that many, but whatever, to each his own. You know, 6 knives, something in their boot, and they just looked like a bag of trash all the time. And if anyone is listening to this podcast that was a part of that, you know that I'm telling the truth. But not that they weren't professional, they just wanted to be whatever they wanted to be. And so my guys, we would see them at the chow hall. Then one day, like very early in that deployment, my guys came up to me and they were like, listen, we don't actually want to grow our hair. We want to have short hair. We want to clean our face, and we don't want to look like those guys. We don't want to be associated with those guys. We actually want to be professional. We want to be quiet professionals, and we don't want to stick out like those guys stick out. We want to look different. And so that was an interesting leadership lesson that I got. Basically it's like, show your team, if they say they want to do something, show them what they're going to look like if they do it. And let them decide, do you really want to look like that? Or do you want to look like a professional?
Yep.
Do you want to look awesome? Or do you want to look scraggly and unprofessional? And if you have a bunch of professionals that work with you and work for you, they're going to want to be more professional when you show them what they look like when they're not acting professional. So that was like, that would like kind of like blew my hair back. And since I'm bald, that was a very hard thing to do. My eyebrows just went right over my head. And I was like, oh yeah. And so anytime they would kind of like start feeling sorry for themselves, I'm like, you can go work for Blackwater or Dynacor or Triple Canopy. And they were like, nope, we're good. We're happy right where we are. We have the freedom that we want. We get to do the things we want. We get to go work out and play speedball and still drive people around and drive fast and you know, still go out and, you know, guys that were performing at a higher level, I would, you know, send them out to the other platoons that were kicking doors and doing that direct action mission. So as a reward, I would send them out for 2, 3, 4 weeks. Then they would come back, and then I'd send a couple more guys out and come back. So as they performed at a higher level, I would send them out as a reward. And so that was just another kind of leadership lesson. I didn't have to, but I wanted to. I wanted them to be able to do the job that they trained up to do, go get some, and then come back and be part of the platoon again, and go and learn maybe some new tactics, techniques, and procedures that another platoon was using. And then come back and then maybe share that, like, you know, or share with them what we were doing. And then that helped make the entire East Coast SEAL platoon system, all the teams that were working together, made them more efficient.
So there's a couple of things to unpack in there too. So, you know, you're talking about a team of already in an elite organization. So they have to really embrace the elite mindset to begin with, because they know where they are, right? And in the average environment in leadership, you're only going to have a portion of your employment population really running with an elite mindset, right? You're going to have performers, you're going to have your steady eddies, and then you're going to have your, you know, your bottom rank in rank and file that you're trying to figure out, like, how long are they going to last, and when am I going to have to start to performance manage them out the door, right? Um, so in what you're saying, I love the fact that you talk about how you show them, it's like, if you want to look like that, you know, they automatically, it's like that sense of self-efficacy kicks in, and they want to be something better, right? The pro comes out. But you're going to have in a more private business setting or a corporate setting, you're going to have those people are going to look at those professionals, and some of them are going to go, that's just too much work, right? So you're going to have to figure out, for the ones that are going to respond to that, you're going to have 3 responses. You're going to have the response that you saw and that you got for your top performers. Then you're going to have the ones that are going to be like, yeah, I can do that for a little while, but it is a lot of work. And then you're going to have the bottom rank and file that goes, too hard, only here for a paycheck. So you're going to have to figure out how to utilize that reward system across the board, because it'll look different for those 3 levels. It'll look the same as what you're talking about for your top level, but your major populace and then your bottom, they're not going to fall in line because they have a different level of self-efficacy.
Right. But I have to caveat it. I have to caveat this with, this was I don't know, 12, I said 18 month, but this was a shortened deployment cycle. So it was probably around 12 months of workup where we've been working together as a team.
Yeah.
And we knew who the high performers were, we knew who the low performers were, and that was 12 months of just driving the culture of
Yeah.
the team.
Yeah.
And the culture was of high performance. And if you weren't performing at an extremely high level, then
Yeah.
you didn't last in that platoon. And even if you were like a kind of a middle of the road, you didn't have the rest of the team still brought you up to a certain level.
Yep.
If you were at a lesser performing platoon, then you would have fallen even lower.
Yeah. And I like,
but
what you
because
just
I
said,
had
it's because,
such a high level of guys in that platoon, and
yeah.
I'm not saying that I was a great leader. I'm saying that I had like extremely high level people in the platoon, which made my job easier in some cases, but harder in other cases, because they were a little harder headed, very alpha personality, which that's a different leadership style when you're leading those kind of people.
Yeah. But it was cool because you nailed it. You called it out. This is because your team, your elite members brought everybody up. And
Yeah.
that is very, very key and true in the SEAL teams. That doesn't always necessarily happen in the office. It can, and that's what should happen. So if you want to have the same kind of result that Will's talking about, is that you have to work with your elite people to help bring up the rest of the team.
And I've seen teams that have really high level, very elite personalities and people in the organization, but the leaders are not good leaders. I mean, my sister platoon had some pipe hitters in it, like some just epic dudes that were awesome that I would have loved to have in my platoon.
Yeah.
But the leadership was very poor. And I thought the leadership would be great because they had a lot of senior guys in that platoon. And they were almost the worst performing because I don't think anyone really knew who the real leader was. And no one was really taking responsibility for driving the culture of high performance. And so I actually would take it upon myself and kind of come over to that other platoon and, try to mentor them as much as possible without their kind of undermining their leadership, which is messed up for me. But it was for the greater good. I mean, later on in that deployment, like a lot of people got fired. There was some alcohol related incidences that happened like on the way back from the deployment. Officers were gotten letters of reprimand. Chiefs got letters of reprimand. There was one guy lost his trident, so he was removed from the SEAL teams for a year.
That's a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
That's
had
a
to
huge
go to the fleet for
yeah.
for a year, and then eventually made his way back, and then became a chief, and he started performing at a higher level, but he got hammered. He had to be humbled, and then he got his act together and started performing at a higher level. Not as high as he could have been had he had good leadership, but part of being a leader is you have to drop the hammer sometimes and humble people and then help them come back to where they can be.
Yeah.
Their
Wow, so
capability.
he lost his bird and then he got to come back?
Yeah.
That's like even more rare.
Well, I mean, it happens. It happens on the enlisted side where, they go away, they go to the fleet for a year, then they have to reapply to come back to the team. And it's up to the team that kick them out to accept them back.
Interesting.
Yeah. There's
Very
weird politics that go along with that. A lot of policies and interesting stuff.
Yeah. Well,
so they can't apply to like another SEAL team to come back to another SEAL team on a different coast. They have to apply back to that team.
To the one that they had left.
Accept them back. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, that was a good example. I like that. So do you want to keep going or do you want me to throw one out?
You go for one.
You want me to go for one? Okay.
Yeah.
So, my background is, for those of you, I don't know if you've heard it or not before in the past, but I've worked for 6 Fortune 500 companies. I've been very, very fortunate. My first Fortune 500 company was back when I lived in Hawaii. It was with Warner Brothers Studio Stores when we opened that up, and that was 1992. December of 1992. And then we kicked open the store on January of 1993. So, and so from there on, I worked for several of them, and then I have had the privilege of consulting for 600 small business, or now over 600 small businesses right now. So I've seen a lot of things, done in a lot of unique ways. So I've seen a lot of people handle things very differently. And one of the things that I have learned, and if there's a number one rule that I have followed in leadership, is that your team may not be able to define leadership, because you do run into that. And they tend to also kind of use that term loosely and often in judgment, especially when they're not really truly being led. But they do know when it's missing or when it's absent. So it's kind of like, I hate to say it this way, but it's almost like pornography, right? Everybody's got a different definition of what pornography is, but you know it when you see it. And leadership is very much the same way. And when it's absent and things start going insane and crazy and things are not very organized, and then there's really no clear direction moving forward, even down to like a specific small incidents, they're going to start calling out, there's an absence of leadership here. And it usually comes out in the form of like, well, management sucks, or management's not doing anything, or management is this, or management is that. It's not management. Management is the leading entity. But if they're seeing that management is not doing something, that is the absence of leadership. And often a lot of people, like, look, one of the things that happens with leadership is that leaders don't have problems for very long, right? Real good leaders, especially good leaders, don't have problems for very long. They do one or two things. They either make the determination that whatever the issue is not worth pursuing at this time, or they take on the issue and then they actually put it to some form of conclusion, right? People who avoid dealing with leadership or avoid an issue, that's where your team gets very frustrated, is that when they keep saying what they're saying over and over and over again, and it occurs to them, or it seems to them, that's being swept under the carpet or swept under the rug, or somebody's sticking their head in the sand, right? And when that happens, then that is when they start noticing and start calling out the absence of leadership, because nobody is taking on the hard and difficult conversations that need to be had. And some of these things are very easy to resolve. They're difficult for your employees because they either don't have the authority, they don't have the leverage, they don't have the skills, they don't have the tools. They may not even be in the proper position to do something about it, but they need somebody with all of those things to actually take care of that. And so when those common problems that keep popping up over and over and over again, that continuously frustrate them, and as many times as they get voice and nothing is done about it, even if you tell them like, this is not something that we can tackle right now, they can accept it. They may not like it, but they'll at least accept that in the hopes that you're going to address it a little bit later. But if something doesn't ever get addressed at all and it becomes that white elephant in the room, that's when leadership is absent and in their minds. And at some point in time, that's when the clock starts ticking to either something negative is going to happen or good people are going to start leaving.
Yeah. So when you said something in there that made me like have to scroll through my notebooks here to find what I was looking for. When you said that a leader doesn't have a problem for very long.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of what you described there was the hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot the guy that created this, but basically there's a problem. And most people sort of go through this process, and leaders go through this process much more quickly. So maybe there's like a refusal to accept that problem. And leaders, they don't accept that refusal. They identify the problem, and then they go to this sort of unknown abyss. Maybe they don't know how to solve the problem. Trying to figure out how to solve the problem, there's this struggle that happens. And most people spend their time here. Like, what is the struggle? How do I solve the problem? How do I solve the problem? Then you solve the problem, and then there's a new you, or you create the solution, a new leadership, a new problem solved, new solution out there, and then then there's a new problem, and then you have to continue to go through this sort of problem solving.
Yeah.
But that's just life, and that's sort of the hero journey. That's the leadership journey. That's just the way it is, and that's part of being a leader is not always knowing the answer to the problem, but always trying to find the answer and lead your team.
And here's the thing too, that a lot of people don't realize when it comes to leadership and your team looking at you as quote unquote management, And this goes back to what you were saying earlier, is that if you are the apex leader of your organization, meaning that you are the number one top tier man or leader in your entity, that means that you own every problem in that company. That doesn't mean that you solve every problem in that company, but you are responsible for every problem in that company. And I don't think people really like take that on, or they don't consider that, right? It's somebody else's problem. It's my lower rank and file problem. It's like this manager's not doing this or this director's not doing that. No, it's your problem. You own it.
Yeah.
You're the one that has the signature on all the checks. And that means it's your problem. It's your responsibility to now work with the talent that you have to resolve that. And then once that gets resolved, going back to what it says, yep, you're going to get another one, right? But you are responsible for 100% of the problems that exist in that business, whether you want it or not. And you're also the one that has the ability to put the right people in place or assign that issue to somebody who's fully capable of handling it. Because you don't have to answer to all the problems, but you do have to address them.
Yeah, it's funny. You were talking about that, and again, a conversation I had a few weeks ago where the leadership didn't want to own any of the problems that were going on in the organization.
No.
There are clearly problems that the leader needed to be addressing.
Yeah.
But the leader was like, nope, it's not my problem. It's their problem. Oh my God. That makes it much harder to solve those problems, because the leader is overall responsible for everything that happens in the organization, and they just wanted to blame someone else.
Yep. And I've walked into that. So when I've walked into a consulting agreement, or I've walked into a consulting situation, and somebody says, well, this is what we want you to do as an HR person. Here's what we want. You need to take all of this. And I'm like, okay, you understand that I can't absorb all of that, because at the end of the day, no matter what happens, if you fire somebody or not fire somebody, you like what I do, you don't like what I do, it doesn't matter. You are 100% responsible for each and every single employee and 100% of their actions. Like, do you get that? Well, that's not what we're looking for. And I'm like, darling, that's what you signed up for, whether you believe it or not. It's like, and I just tell them, I'm like, listen, if that's how you are, this is not going to work. So let's just cut it here. And you are welcome to go ahead and find somebody else who might want to try and take that on. And inevitably, I promise you, at the end of the day, you're going to find they cannot own 100% of your people issues. You have to take them on. All they're going to do is course correct as best as they can to the point where it's out of control. And now you got a mess that's 10x the size of where you are right now.
Yeah.
So
you got to own it.
Yeah, absolutely.
As the leader of the organization, it's all the good and all the bad.
Yeah. Yep.
Falls on your shoulders. All absolutely. Leaders, they're super happy to take credit for the good stuff, but not in a hurry to take credit for the bad stuff.
Yeah.
If you can own the bad stuff up front right away, you'll have good stuff happen much more quickly.
Yeah. Speaking of good stuff, you had another one that was really good that we talked about earlier.
Let's see. I think it was leading up. Yeah. So I was talking to, as a senior enlisted guy in the military, my job is not to create policy. My job is to influence policy. My job is to lead the men and women in the organization, enforce the policy, but also as a senior enlisted advisor to the leadership, my job is to influence the decisions they make, the policies that they put in place. And so, depending on who the leader is, they could have a tremendous amount of ego, or they could be wide open to recommendations. And depending on who the leader I was working for at the time was, actually, you know what? It didn't matter if the leader was open to my suggestions or not. The way I learned to frame my suggestions, and I call this leading up, and I had someone ask me this question not that long ago, where they asked me, so how do I lead my leaders? And so, of course, I was like, I need more information, what you're asking me right now, so I can, give you an answer to maybe what you're asking. And so basically the leader, it's a lot of stuff that I was just, kind of referring to. The leader didn't want to take ownership. The leader was blaming other people for things that the leader probably should have been doing. The leader was making policies without, consulting the team, completely in a vacuum. And that's the way a lot of leaders work. So if you're going to lead up, maybe you're not at the top of the organization, maybe you're in the middle, but you have some sort of influence and you have some face time with the leadership, and you want some policies to be changed or written or created in a certain way, a thing to do would be something like, I really like that policy when you were talking about creating a policy for XYZ. And I really liked when you framed it this way or that way, or something like that, written in a way or framed in a way that would benefit you as the downstream recipient of that policy. But you also know that because you're in the weeds and you really know how the organization works, you know the operations of the organization, you know the impact that those policies are going to have, you want it to be in your best interest. You want it to be in the best interest of the organization. And sometimes the leadership making decisions in policies in a vacuum, they don't really know all the ins and outs because they're not a good leader. They're not leading the way they need to. Yep. So I would make suggestions about, I would frame it in such a way that it was their idea. And the best way to lead, and it doesn't matter if you're at the top or, in the middle or at the bottom, that leader, if you make it their idea, even like when we were doing, that security detail work, my commanding officer because he said, you are the best performing platoon at the team, I have to put my best foot forward. You are my best foot. Therefore, I can't trust anyone else. I trust you. I'm like, oh my God, I have to take that responsibility. He put it like, he framed it in such a way. I'm like, if we want the best job, then, or the highest visibility job, that's the one for us. And same thing when you're leading up, when you want that leader to make a decision that's in your best interest, and it doesn't matter if it's like in a business, if it's in a relationship, if it's whatever, you could just tell your partner, I loved when you were talking about this thing, or you wanted to go to this place or whatever. And maybe they'll be on board or not, depending on how well you know them, or if they know that you're really trying to like get one over on them. But it can certainly benefit you in any role that you are in, and no matter where you are on that leadership ladder. If you're at the top, use the same thing for your people in the middle and at the bottom. Hey, you guys, I remember when you guys said that this was like you wanted to like go down this road, so I think maybe we're going to go down this road. I'd love your feedback or things like that. If you're in the middle or near the top and you're still leading up, you can say something like, I remember when you were talking about this policy, it seems like probably a good time to like maybe implement this thing that you were talking about once upon a time. And maybe they have no idea what you're talking about because they never actually said it, but it was something that has been mentioned in the past. So it's not completely foreign to them. And then you could say like, I remember you saying the XYZ, this or that, or whatever. And then they actually change course. And it may not be the thing that you actually want them to do, but it'll at least be in the right direction of where you want them to go. And then you continue to influence it along the way till you get what you actually want at the end of the day. So I had a leader one time. The Navy paid for him to go to Harvard for his post-grad, for his master's. And he said, my favorite class at Harvard was the class in negotiation. So we actually hired his Harvard negotiation professor to come to the team and teach us how to negotiate. And his definition of negotiation was, let them have it your way. I like jujitsu, and I learned some phrases very similar to that when I was training. One of my instructors said, "Let them decide how they're going to lose. Just let them move, let them do the thing, and then they're going to fall into your trap." I say the same thing when I'm teaching guys close quarters combat. Like, let the bad guy decide how he's going to lose. Don't let him decide how you're going to lose. Let him decide how he's going to lose. Set yourself up for success no matter where you go.
That's really good. That is really good.
All of those. I'm gonna trademark all of those, and I'm sure I'll have like more trademark lawsuits on my hand.
Let's
I only have one right now.
Let's not go there. Well, let me ask you. So here's a question for you. So, and I know you don't necessarily open the door on emotion and whatnot all the time, but you do periodically. So when you were approached by that leader that said, you are the best and I trust you the most, how did that make you feel as a leader to hear something like that?
I was still pissed off that I wasn't going to Afghanistan to do that mission.
Really?
But it did cool my jets a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I had to go back and convince the platoon, who was also just as mad as I was, that this is a good thing. We're going to take lemons and we're going to turn them into lemonade. We're going to have the best deployment out here. We're going to do this and that and the other thing. And you know, and I also told them that any opportunity that I can cut you away to go do the mission that we've been training for, then I will. And they're like, okay, we trust you.
There you
So
go.
having their trust is like a completely underrated resource. Like if you lose trust, I mean, you're in, especially in the SEAL teams, your reputation follows you everywhere.
Yeah.
And if you have not a good reputation, it's really, really hard to overcome that.
Yep, it is. And in fact, all the guys that I coach coming out of the SEAL teams, and it's really interesting who I hear they trust and who I hear they don't. And we're talking sometimes those conversations happen years after retirement.
Oh, yeah.
Years. And it is a broken deal. And it like look, if
you can say that we don't hold grudges, we for sure hold grudges.
Oh yeah. So but you know, like listen, if you want to hear more about what we have to say about trust, go back and check out episode number 2, because we talk a lot about that whole episode is based off of trust, and it's really awesome one. But it is really interesting. And you know, here's the thing. If you are leading a group of people and you need them to go do something and you get a response and a reaction, just like what Will identified, like he wasn't happy about it. But here's the thing. This is the difference between winners and those that can't live up to or refuse to live up to the expectation. And that is, Will turned around and executed leadership and said, listen, here's the expectation. We're going to make this the best deployment of ever. We're going to turn this around. We're going to make lemonade out of lemons. That's what leadership is. I mean, he literally, nobody had to tell him to do that. He knows that if he's going to be trusted, he has to now go get the buy-in of everybody else. And there's about how many people would you say? 18 that you had to go talk
guys.
to? Huh?
22.
20. Okay, so I wasn't far off. So 22 people that he now has. So that's take his anger and frustration and everything he's doing, multiply that times 22, and now he has to go confront that. That's an intimidating thing for anybody to go through. And he walked in with a plan, and he walked in to set the expectation. And it's like, this is what it is. And sometimes you have to take that position of this is a non-negotiable. However, here's where you start to actually now work through the process. And that is, if I can, I will do whatever, right? So you see what happened is that he walked in having to completely, after all the hard work that they did, completely reset the rules of engagement, and then remind them that these are orders and not preferences. And
they're orders, not invitations.
That's right. Exactly. And then it's like, we're moving forward, period. I mean, that's where the non-negotiable piece is. And, you know, when you have a group of professionals, they're going to track with that. And they're going to have the emotion behind it. So what happens? So what I see more often is that sometimes leaders really kind of get trapped into trying to lead the emotion and not necessarily the mission, right? And that comes to my second thing, and that is, if it's not important to you, it's important to no one. So you have to explain to them, this is why it's important. This is what we're doing. I mean, adults have to understand the why behind things. Now, in this kind of environment, look, the SEAL teams work in a collaborative manner, in a very autocratic environment, right? So that means that there's the hierarchy, but they come together. And like some of the stuff that you were saying about not following the rules and everything, team guys will break bad rules or rules that lead to no effect just so they can help create better ones, right? So that's just how these guys think. They think outside of the box, right? So if it's not important to you, then it's not going to be important to anybody else. If he were to walk in and be sheepish, which, trust me, I don't think that there's an ounce of sheepishness in Will whatsoever at all.
That's a different conversation.
Yeah, it's like super alpha. But if you walk in and if your team will smell it and they'll know it, right? which is also comes to my third thing. They're kind of like blending together here, is that you also can't fake leadership. You can't do it. So that means that you have to build up your ability to have the hard conversations. You have to build up your ability to be able to pull out the trust. You have to be out, and all this is done through those things that we were talking about in the last episode. Is like, you have to show your intent. You have to show your integrity. You have to do it through your integrity. You have to have the hard conversations. You have to be the one that people can say, okay, look, they're serious. Because here's the thing, at the end of the day, and I heard this phenomenal, I'm going to quote somebody who I absolutely admire. His name is Keith Craft. And here's the thing, is that if you want something great, you can't sew from the normal. You can't. You have to sew from the exceptional. And that means that you have to constantly turn everybody's attention to the exceptional. And if they can't get on that bus, they shouldn't be riding your ride.
I think you gave me a little too much credit a minute ago about not faking leadership. I will tell you, in that platoon, I had no idea. I had no idea how to lead. So I was completely uncomfortable the entire time. Like, there were TTPs I didn't know. There was so many things I didn't know. This was my first time leading a big group of men. Like, my other, other than teaching sniper school, which I was just in charge and was the lead senior enlisted guy of sniper school, was still a very different environment than leading men in combat. And so I was extremely uncomfortable in that leadership role. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just doing the best I could, what I thought was kind of right. But I still didn't, like, I know so much more now. And then I've gone on and I've messed up leadership after that. Like, that was probably my defining roles as a leader. And then I messed up roles, and I'm like, okay, so I went too far this way, too far that way. So let's find where that middle, like, leaning more towards this other side is.
Yeah, but that is leadership.
It's better to be more uncomfortable and just leading and leaning into it than to sit back and be lazy.
Yeah,
which is where I had massive failure.
Right, but that is leadership, though. That's the thing. It's the taking on. And so let me give some clarity to this, right? So you can't fake leadership, right? So you're taking it on, you're feeling uncomfortable. And seriously, I would dare you to find a leader that felt 100% comfortable every day in the job, because that just doesn't exist, right? What I'm talking about faking leadership is that
people in leadership positions, yes, but actual leaders, no.
Correct. So faking leadership is, you went in there, you didn't know what you were going to get, but you knew damn well the trajectory you had to go in. And that's what we're going to do. You set the tone, you set the pace, you set the expectation. Whether you knew it was going to be the right thing or not, whether it was successful or not, didn't matter. You led the way, right?
Right. I just made a decision and moved forward, whether it was a good decision or bad. And then if it was a bad decision, I just changed on the fly. Okay, that was a bad idea. Owned it, moved, like, all right, let's switch and go this way. But I was always open to feedback.
You continued to lead the way, regardless of whether it was the right way or the wrong way. You had to back it up a little bit. You always led the way. Faking leadership is walking in and going, okay, this is what we're going to do. I want to hear, what do you guys think? And somebody gives an idea. It's like, okay, yeah, go do that. And then you let everybody just kind of go off and do their own thing. Matter of fact, one of the best examples of this is from a phenomenal movie, Band of Brothers. And you remember when they were in the Battle of the Bulge? I don't know if you ever saw the movie, Will, or not, or the whole series. But when they're at the Battle of the Bulge, they had one leader that would constantly, like, just go wander off into the woods. It's like, okay, you take care of this. I'm gonna go make a call. And he was like always yawning, and he was, somebody's little star child that they put out in the middle of the worst conditions possible, so he could get battlefield experience, so he could get his next battlefield commission or actually get advanced. That's what I'm talking about. That is an example of faking leadership, right? You can't be in the heat of everything and expect your people to take things on when you are not constantly leading the way. You may not necessarily know the answer, but you either know how to get it, or you know how to try, and you know how to recover from potential failure, right? That's leadership. My father for 23 years was a leader of a small hospital. Well, I'd say small. He actually helped build this hospital into the third largest hospital system in the state of Pennsylvania. And his phrase was, we lead the way. lead the way. It was on everything. And he passed away a year ago. And I delivered a lot of his business artifacts back to the hospital. They're working on a big project. And one of them was this huge, it was when he retired, this huge, massive picture frame. And it had everybody's signatures down below of where it was. And at the very top, it said, lead the way. They still use that today at the hospital, which is so impressive because not only the hospital has different leadership, but it's also part of a network now where it wasn't before.
Right.
Right. And they still use it. Right. So
and that was just driving the culture of the organization.
Absolutely. And it's lead the way. Right. You embraced that exact same thing, whether you believed that you had leadership right or not. You weren't faking it. You were just living in it.
I just had no idea what I was doing. I was figuring it out on the way.
That's all right. So, hey, look, sometimes you have to build the airplane while you fly it.
That's what I was doing for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
I showed up before them. I left after them. I was like, what the hell am I doing? Yes.
Yeah. And you know, and I've been in similar situations. Like I walk it, like one of the biggest things that I was always hired for was being able to go into an environment and start fixing things, meaning we had things that were out of place, SOPs that weren't being followed. We had mid-level managers that had like no idea what was going on. And I come walking and I'm like, how do you guys get to this point when we have SOPs, we have policy, we have process, we have procedure? All you have to do is live up to it. So let's live up to it, right? It's that simple.
Well, you know, and here's a leadership hack that I used a lot inadvertently. When I didn't actually know the answer, I didn't tell them I didn't know the answer. I would just ask the junior personnel, what do you guys think about this? How would you solve this problem? We got this thing that we're working on. How would you solve this problem? And I would just get their ideas.
Yeah.
And I think most organizations, the leadership comes in and they feel like they have to own all the ideas. Well, you're going to own all the ideas. They don't have to be your ideas. Give credit to other people. Let them run. Like they probably have better ideas than you. Yeah. I remember I have had just some epically smart dudes working for me, way smarter than me. And, you know, I didn't let my ego get in the way. My ego was still intact and I was able to ask for help without looking like I was asking for help. I'm not going to say I mastered that, but I got pretty darn good at it.
Yep.
What do you guys think? And it just gave them ownership of the situation. And so they took it on as if it was their full-time responsibility to solve this problem.
Yep. And if you want,
my responsibility, but it was, who
and
cares? We're a team at the end of the day.
Yeah. And if you think you're having a hard time moving your team forward, I promise you, when you take this exact same thing that Will is talking about, and I would say this works for leaders who are moderately successful or relatively successful, is that if your team is responsible for like putting in and help building the idea, like I'm telling you right now, if they are part of the design, they will tend to own it. They will tend to embrace it.
Oh yeah.
Rather than being dictated to, right? And then expecting to follow it. So if you give somebody the opportunity to say, hey, listen, here's what we're up against. I would really like your ideas. And then you're next, you know, you find yourself in a position where the consensus of everybody saying is like, yeah, this is the way forward. Guess what? Your entire team is now willing to own that because they were part of designing it. Now they feel like they have skin in the game, and it gives them that sense of empowerment. It gives them a sense of structure. It gives them a sense that they feel trusted. And the more ambitious ones are really going to step up and roll with it. But you can't do that in every step of what you do. That works. It works well so long as you use it appropriately. And you also have to have a certain level of confidence in knowing that if you allow to give your team the stick and they're able to shift the rudders a little bit, you know what? Take pride in the fact that you put some of your greatest and your smartest people in a position, and it's not about you making yourself look good. It's about you serving them. You serve them. Trust me, they're going to start building that loyalty towards you, and everybody starts rising at that point. You meet them where they are, and I promise you, and you give them things that make them feel good and that enrichment. It's not about coffee breaks. It's not about working remotely from home. It's not about, you know, nap pods, you know, throughout the corporate office. It is literally about giving them something that they can embrace and own and feel proud of. And then all of a sudden your whole team is starting to rise. It's a process, but it can and does happen all the time.
No, 100%. And I just remembered a quote. Like, so you said something about it's not about, I'm going to paraphrase some of what you just said. It's not about you. It's
Right.
about them. It's about the team. It's about the mission. It's about the organization. If you as a leader, you're trying to make it about yourself, you've already lost. You've lost the respect of the team because they can see through that.
Absolutely.
They're going to read that. They're going to read that louder than anything else. But if you make it about them, if you make it about the team, if you make it about the mission, the organization, that resonates a lot louder. There was a quote, and I don't remember. I'm gonna look it up after this, of someone saying, "If you can live with the idea, I'm gonna mess this up, but if you can live with the like making that someone else's idea, letting someone else take credit for your idea, who cares as long as it gets done?"
Yep, absolutely.
And it was
And
like,
you know
I don't
what?
know, it was like Ronald Reagan or Roosevelt or someone like that. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Clearly, it was someone that starts with an R. If I said Reagan and Roosevelt, it's probably none of those
They're
people.
cousins. But you know, and look, when you're doing that, celebrate them. Seriously, celebrate them. Like it doesn't matter if it's about you. People are going to look at you as a phenomenal leader who, and they want to, like, if you're in a corporate environment or you might be a mid-level leader, if you're celebrating your team and you're bragging about how phenomenal your team has done this, that, and the other thing, and what they're capable of, you know what that says to everybody who's looking in? Like, wow, I want to be part of that. Like, how are you doing this? What's going on? They will no longer they see you as being effective. It's that. So I have a friend of mine who calls that little the chatter that's in our heads, she calls it the itty bitty shitty committee. And if your itty bitty shitty committee is going off and it's telling you that you're not worth this, or you're not, like, I should be feeling more blah 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 because I'm the one that got my team, it's like, man, you have got the wrong mindset. You are only selling yourself short. If you let a team to do something that they weren't capable of doing before or didn't do before, you got them to do it. That's something you should celebrate quietly yourself. Like, you have to give yourself credit. If you're feeling like, well, I'm scared if I give my team too much attention, then it's going to pull me out of the limelight. No, they got there because of you. So go find a way to celebrate your individual accomplishment as a leader, because a lot of people will talk about this. They're like, yeah, you got to celebrate your team. That's it. But then there's the, well, what about me factor? You
Right.
matter just as much too. And that's the one thing that a lot of people say. Like, some people have this awkward vision about leadership. It's like the leader should absolutely be humble. Yeah, be humble, but go celebrate your accomplishments as well. I mean, just
Right.
because they're saying humble doesn't mean that you don't earn credit for something. You're the one that got them to do it.
Right.
You know, pat yourself on the
Yeah.
back. Go buy yourself some Louis Vuitton. Go do
Yeah.
whatever it is
I'm
that makes
like,
you
as
feel
you're
good.
talking, I'm reminded of a platoon that I worked with on that same deployment. And they were off doing, like, our principal had left the country and we had very little to do. So my officer in charge told me, like, go kick some doors, go do some of that other stuff. And I was like, that's not really my role. He's like, there's nothing else for you to do here. So he was younger than me, but he was still a very good leader. And I think he became the commanding officer of a team at it's a number somewhere between 5 and 7 that I can't remember, one of the squadrons over there. And like later on in his career, I think I don't know if he's still in or not, but anyway, he's leading me and saying, hey, go do this. And so I went down and worked with that other platoon, and with the platoon chief who I looked up to. One of the things that I look for in a leader is, am I willing to work for them? Even if they're at my level or below my level, am I willing to work for them? And he was a leader that I would be willing to work for. And so I kind of worked with his platoon. He was doing some other stuff. I was working with his platoon, helping to plan a mission. And it was interesting. The culture that he had built, or the culture that was in that platoon, was, we want to solve the problem before he gets here and tells us what to do. before he gets here. Like they wanted to have every answer that, or every question answered that he could possibly ask before he ever asked the question. And so that was something that was kind of resonating with me. Like they were conscious, and they told me that they're like, we wanted like solve the problem before he asked the question.
Yep.
And I was like, that is epic culture. Like,
I had a boss like that.
how do I develop that in the people who work for me? How do I instill that sort of work ethic? And so I'm still kind of reveling on that. But that is also kind of the personality of the people that were in that platoon. They were a high performing platoon. Yeah. And it was like some pretty cool stories that came out of some of the work that we did over there. Yep. But yeah, that was just another example of leadership that I hadn't really thought about.
I worked with, so my favorite all-time mentor and boss that I worked for, his name is Tom. He just retired after 30 years of being with CarMax, and he's actually now, I got him being a coach over at the Honor Foundation, and he absolutely loves it. And so Tom had this amazing way of teaching people without like over lecturing them. If I mentioned this before, we talked about number one business objective, right? And then people would say, if we do this, and he would ask the questions like, is it going to help us sell more cars? And they said, no. It's like, it's not worth pursuing, right? So it's that guy. And Tom and I used to play this game every single day. And matter of fact, we kind of still play it to this day. When I was learning that job that he gave me, the most sensitive job, and his right-hand person position that I held, I would come in with a list. I was one of the only people that walked in. It's like, hey, I need 35 minutes of your time. He's like, okay, great. He knew how to plan it, and he'd make time for me. So I would create a list of all the things. Everybody else would just kind of like run in with their hair on fire. I would create a list of things I need to talk to him about. Here's what we do. And he started teaching me, and I'd say, here's this. And I would kind of like dump it in his lap, right? I would start kind of complaining a little bit, and I would dump it in his lap. And then he said, and then he turned around. He said, well, what about this? Have you looked at this? No. Okay, so I'm not going to answer it, and I need you to go back and I need you to get the answer to that. It started to train me to be extremely thorough in understanding what was going on. And then the game that he started playing is that once he kind of got me started into this habit, he would walk in and he'd say, okay, so you're wrong. And I'm like, damn it. And I would go back, and the next time I would come in and I would tell, and I'm talking about a brilliant man who knew, like Tom was so good that he actually knew how to do my job without actually doing my job. And he knew about that. Every single position in the company. He was phenomenal. I mean, brilliant. And so I would go and I would come back the next time and I would be more prepared. But I didn't have everything that he wanted me to have. And so he'd look at me and he'd go, and you're wrong. And I go, damn it. And I go walk out. And every time I would come across it, and it became a joke between the two of us, right? Years ago, when I first started, I had heard through the grapevine, and it was a credible source, that Tom said Brenda was the best hiring decision I have ever made in my entire career. And Tom told me that I don't need a degree to go do what I do in human resources. I just have to have a lot of experience and, blah, blah, do all the study. And I started winning these awards, and, we didn't work together anymore. And, but we still kept in touch. I was winning awards. I was getting published and everything. And I called him up one day and he answered the phone and says, how you doing? And I'm like, well, I have good news for you. He said, what's that? And I'm like, you're wrong. And he goes, you have yet to prove it. And I said, I'm still your best hiring decision. He goes, damn it. But you know what? But that's leadership, right? He brought me up. He brought me up to a level that I could therefore take all of this discipline that I learned from the benefit of working with him and go be whatever I wanted to be. And I did. I still talk to him about the things that I was doing, what I was up to. And, I was proud of those moments when I became a director of HR for a space agency and a VP of HR, and I call him and tell him all this. And yeah, it was only one time I was able to catch him on being wrong. And that was reminding him that I was his best hiring decision ever. And he says, how did you even know that? And I'm like, because your managers talk. So, yeah. So, but that's leadership.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so we're running along here. So let's I got one last thing to talk about. My number 3. I've given way more than 3 at this point.
That's okay.
But the last one that I wanted to talk about is It's to let the battlefield mature.
Oh,
So
yeah.
a lot of leaders, well, intrusive leaders that are very proactive, they may see something pop up and they may just immediately squash it, or there's a lot of times these knee-jerk reactions. It happens in the military, it happens in government, it happens in organizations all the time. They change complete policies that affect the entire organization when really there's no reason to do that. There's nothing wrong with the policies that were in place. People just didn't follow the policies. It's like, whatever, I'm going to be a little bit political here. We have, I don't know, like 876 different gun laws. And we're so busy trying to create more gun laws every time there's a mass shooting or anything like that. There's nothing wrong with the gun laws we have. How about if we just enforce the ones that we currently have on the books? We don't need to make new gun laws. If we enforced everything that was on the books and we still had issues out there, well, let's find out what the thing
Which
is with
one's
the
not
issue.
working? Yeah.
What is it a law that's not working? Like, I mean, criminals are going to break the laws anyway. They don't care about what the laws are. So, but a lot of leaders, lots of leaders see it like, I don't know, a guy gets a DUI. And well, that looks poorly on the organization. That looks poorly on their ability to lead. And well, why did your guy get a DUI? All this other stuff. You know, it happens, you know, in the military quite a lot. And what did you, oh, you know, then that leader gets fired because the upper chain of command loses confidence in his ability to lead. And then they change all these policies and, you know, you can't do whatever it is. Well, how about if, you know, people just follow the rules? You don't have to change policies. You don't have to like make these knee-jerk reactions. Just continue to enforce the policies that you have in place. And then go look for the root cause. What is the root cause? Is it something to do with the policy? Then maybe do some policy changing. What is the root cause? Is it, you know, that person just was a bad hire? Maybe that person had a bad day, a bad week. Maybe they've got some stuff going on in their personal life that you don't know about, that they bring to work, and then it impacts the organization. Well, that's where intrusive leadership comes in. Let the battlefield mature. Go ask questions. Go find out what the real problem is. Go do, you know, somewhat of an investigation and see what that is. I mean, unfortunately, that takes away from, you know, leading the company, but it also helps you become a better leader. Yeah. And empower your junior leaders to go find out what's going on and have them report back to you. And let's figure out what the root cause of it is, instead of just like something happens and you make knee-jerk reactions, and rather than letting the battlefield mature. I mean, in actual combat, you know, some guy might be taking pop shots at you over here. You go to address that guy taking those pop shots, and you'd run into an ambush. That is not what you want to do. You want to let the battlefield mature. Let's see what's actually going on. Am I taking effective fire? Not really. Do I really need to address that problem? Maybe I need to like sit back, call in, you know, some close air support, call in some fast movers to come in and look at the area, or bring a UAV in to like see what's going on with that guy. And then, you know, maybe they'll be able to see if there's an ambush, and then you can go take care of the guy, or just, you know, go drop a bomb on him. Yeah. Whatever it is. But you don't have to like run into it, like run to your death and run into an ambush because you made a decision without really letting the battlefield mature.
Yeah. It's critical thinking. It's finest. Yeah. It's critical thinking. It's breaking things down, you know, and, you know, I tell people, you ever notice that when somebody has a hidden agenda that people tend to move really, really fast because they're trying to get ahead of it? The thing is with a hidden agenda is that if you just slow things down, and if it's a real hidden agenda, it's going to unfold all on its own. It's the same thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So just, take a breath, take a minute and say, well, let's just step back and let's see what this is for what it is. Or are we imagining something? And if time reveals all. It always does.
Yeah, I'm going to be political for just a minute here.
Go ahead and be political.
The whole, and then we got to wrap this up. But you know, the whole coronavirus C-19 thing that we all went through. In the beginning, I was like, that seems really bad. Let's kind of look at the whole picture rather than like running out and, you know, getting a jab in the arm or whatever. I was like, so let me gather as much information as I can. And clearly I can't have all the information because it's just not all out there. Right. And and what I noticed, things just weren't making sense. Like I never take anything at face value. I don't trust anyone ever, especially someone in any form of authority that is trying to push me to do one thing or another. And so I just sort of sat back and I watched all news organizations. What is the information they're putting out? And it was so heavily one-sided. And anytime anyone said anything that was counter to this very heavily influenced narrative, they just got squashed. They got canceled, they got fired, they got whatever the thing was. And then things started, and I'm like, that seems kind of weird. I still don't have enough information. Again, I live on a rock in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I don't have all the information that everyone else has. And so my input is still limited due to, most people. And then the narrative started countering itself. And I was like, and then they were so staunch one way, and then they're so staunch the other way. And in my opinion, if you're just that staunch in one direction and you can't adjust, or you can't negotiate, or you can't be flexible, there's a problem. Nothing is finite. Nothing, not leadership, not nothing that we talk about. Nothing is finite. There are nuances to everything. And when there are no nuances to what you're telling me, there's a problem. And so I am always questioning authority. And I think everyone should question authority. Leaders should question their own authority. And they should be okay with their subordinates questioning their authority, because that's what makes us become better leaders.
And that like
when you question me, like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That'll be another episode. But I want guys to like, and maybe I don't have the right answer. Maybe I'm thinking of it from a completely different perspective than everyone else is. And so I either have to make a really good argument, I have to justify my decisions, which you shouldn't have to do as a leader, but I actually encourage it. Like sometimes there's no time to, talk about it. Sometimes it's mission critical. We need violence of action right now. Right. Go execute, and then we can talk about it later. Maybe I made the wrong decision, but we needed to make a decision right now. We can't sit here and talk about it. We got to just go and execute. And again, if it's the wrong decision, I own that decision. The end. But I would say, continue to question authority. Be okay with people questioning your authority. It's not making you lesser of a man or a woman or less of a leader. It actually makes you a stronger leader. If you can take that on and create that safe space for your subordinates to come and sort of vent to you and give you that feedback. And then that actually creates trust at the end of the day. I mean, how many people don't trust the government now based on all the, the very staunch, you will do what I say and not as I do of that whole, C-19 thing that was out there. So anyway, that's all I got for today's podcast here.
The Will's political corner.
Oh, I was getting a little carried away there.
Tell us how you really feel.
I will. Maybe that's the next episode. But thank you guys so much for joining us on the Mission Ready podcast, where we create high-performing teams. Yeah, and again, my name is William Branham. Go. What?
Bo, we got something coming out we don't want people to forget about. So let me jump in here real quick. I know
you lead. I'm ready to wrap this thing up and move to the next thing.
Yeah, sorry. So we've got a book coming out that we're pretty excited about. It's the same name as the podcast, and is Mission Ready. You can, and we also have something that's really cool. So if you are wanting to, we're going to give you a free tool to use. It's not one of those, we're going to get you a custom report, and when you do this tool, it's a team assessment, and you can find it on our website at missionreadyleadership.com. And it's going to ask you some pretty uncomfortable questions. And when you use it, when you actually complete the team assessment, it'll allow you to actually take this custom report that you're going to get with us. It'll to come in your inbox 24 hours later, and it's going to start to give you some ideas about how to actually move your team forward in the area where you've got some deficiencies, right? And then, we're going to send you all kinds of love after that. You can actually follow us. You can link to our various social media sites on our website at missionreadyleadership.com. You can also go ahead and find us. You can find me. I have like one of the weirdest last names ever. I'm the only Brenda Neckvatal in the country, and I made it really easy. You can find me on just searching hashtag Dear Brenda. You can also find Will by searching hashtag 5SEAL Secrets. That's the number 5SEAL Secrets. That way you don't have to type our very long names, and you'll be good. So make sure you guys share this episode. Tell your friends, your coworkers, your mates about this. Anybody that you know is struggling in leadership, we're here to help out. And definitely get in and try taking that team assessment. I think you're going to like it. And it's for anybody at any level of leadership, and that can use this. And it is pretty authentic and it's pretty genuine. It's not something that we buy out of a box or something like that. We actually created it ourselves. So it's
Like a Cracker Jack box.
That's right. You get a prize every time you pop open.
Do they even have Cracker Jacks anymore?
They do, but it's not in a box anymore. They're in like bags.
Oh. Do they still have a prize?
The prizes, and they're even cheaper than they were when we were kids. So
that's not possible.
Believe it or not, it is, I think. So anyway, so go ahead, close us out, mister. You're so good at it.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us on the Mission Ready podcast, where we focus on building high-performing teams. My name is William Branham, retired Navy SEAL, and this is
Brenda Neckvatal,
HR specialist,
HR,
some other stuff,
master,
and all that good stuff.
Right.
Hope you guys have an awesome week. We'll talk to you soon.
Stay mission ready.
Oh, yeah. Stay mission ready.